Imagine the most pristine, vibrant, just absolute peak performance athlete you've ever seen.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right. Like someone who has achieved a level of physical perfection that makes everyone else look like they aren't even trying.
Yeah, like an Olympian at the absolute top of their game.
Exactly. Now imagine that this athlete achieved this impossible standard, not by, training in some state-of-the-art facility,
No.
and not by battling the fiercest competitors in the world.
Which is usually how it works.
Right. But what if they achieved it by accidentally getting locked inside a closet for their entire life?
Wow. That completely shatters the fundamental narrative we have about growth, doesn't it?
It really does.
Because we're so conditioned to believe that greatness is forged in the fires of competition,
Yeah.
The friction of the world is like supposed to be the whetstone that sharpens us.
But what if it's the exact opposite? What if the very act of participating in the world-like competing, socializing, just existing around others is the exact thing draining away your ultimate potential?
It's a heavy thought.
It is. And welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a highly specific, frankly mind-bending source today.
This one is really unique.
It's entry from June 8th, 2026, titled Notes on Fishkeeping, Part 269.
Catchy title.
Right, very academic. It's written by an aquarist named Ang. And it documents this bizarre, completely accidental discovery involving a species called the Jewel Cichlid.
And it's a discovery that forces us to really re-examine the biological and honestly the psychological cost of living in a society.
Yes, absolutely.
Because we are going to look at a scenario where the total removal of community enforced by literal solitary confinement resulted in a level of vitality that completely eclipsed everyone else living freely out in the open.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we get to the philosophical heavy lifting, I really need to understand the physical reality of this closet we're talking about. The logistics here are just fascinating to me.
They really are. It's such a specific set of circumstances.
So Ang maintains this outdoor pond, right? It's a thriving, chaotic community of Jewel Cichlids just, doing their thing.
Right, a totally normal ecosystem.
But somewhere in this pond, there is a mesh basket. It's part of the filtration system, or the planters, I think. And Ang finds a single juvenile fish completely trapped inside it.
Yeah, just swimming around in this tiny space.
How does a fish accidentally put itself in solitary confinement?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's really all about the mechanics of the environment changing over time.
Changing how?
So Ang deduces that this specific fish had been hiding up in that top basket since it was incredibly small. Like, think back to when it was just a tiny fry.
Oh, right. So it was basically microscopic.
Exactly. So the openings in that mesh basket to a baby fish were essentially these massive welcoming doorways.
Okay, so it swims in, and at that stage, it's not a prison at all. It's a panic room.
Precisely. It's an evolutionary safe house. The fry can swim in and out freely whenever it wants.
But the bigger fish can't.
Right. The crucial part is that the larger predators, the adult fish in the main pond, cannot fit through that mesh.
Wow, okay.
So this baby fish finds this incredible sanctuary where it can eat and exist without the constant, terrifying threat of being consumed by its neighbors.
But the architecture of the mesh isn't changing. The fish is.
Yes, that's the trap.
Because every day it eats whatever floats in, right?
Yeah.
And it grows a fraction of a millimeter. And slowly, like imperceptibly, those massive welcoming doorways start getting a little tighter.
It's super gradual.
It's almost like that boiling frog metaphor, but with physical space. Until one day, it swims up to the mesh to, take a lap around the main pond, and it just bounces off.
Yep. It literally outgrew its own
It
exit.
has literally outgrown its own exit. That is so wild.
And we have to remember, this wasn't some deliberate, controlled scientific experiment. No researcher, plucked this fish from the population to measure its stress levels in a sterile tank.
Right, it wasn't a lab setting at all.
Exactly. It was a completely organic accident. The environment itself manufactured a control group of exactly one.
A control group of one. That's such a cool way to put it.
Yeah, because you have the general population navigating the brutal, chaotic reality of a shared ecosystem, and then you have this single individual completely walled off by sheer happenstance.
I can't stop thinking about the psychology of that transition. It's like a childhood crib that you outgrow, but instead of your parents moving you to a bigger bed, the crib just hardens into an impenetrable fortress.
That's a great analogy.
You're trapped by the exact mechanism that was designed to keep you safe. And my immediate assumption is that a highly social organism, trapped in a space that's small, completely isolated from its species, it would just shut down,
You'd think so, yeah.
right? You'd think it would get pale, lethargic, and basically wither away. Confinement is supposed to be a punishment in nature.
And that is the logical assumption based on everything we know about animal welfare and the necessity of enrichment. We assume restriction leads to atrophy.
Exactly.
If you deprive an organism of the space to roam and the society of its peers, the biological expectation is severe decline.
But that brings us to the visual reality of what Aang actually found in that basket. Because it didn't wither. Not at all. The fish did the exact opposite of what biology tells us it should do. Aang pulls this trapped juvenile out, looks at it, and then looks at all the other juvenile Jewel Cichlids of the exact same age swimming freely out in the main pond.
And the contrast is just absolute.
Yeah, tell me about the contrast.
Well, Aang notes that this isolated fish displays, and this is their direct phrasing from the text, the most vibrant red coloration we've ever seen.
The most vibrant, wow.
Yeah. It isn't just hanging on in this tiny mesh cell. It is thriving to a degree that makes its free-swimming peers look dull by comparison.
The most vibrant they have ever seen. That's not a subtle difference. That's a staggering biological anomaly.
It really is.
Aang even explicitly questions if this forced isolation is the secret key to unlocking their, and I quote here, full aesthetic potential.
Full aesthetic potential.
Yes. And that phrase, aesthetic potential, really snagged me. We aren't just saying the fish is physically healthy like it has a good heartbeat. We are talking about a spectacular, undeniable visual brilliance.
Right, and it forces us to redefine what vitality actually means in this context. Because in biology, coloration, especially the deep, intense reds you see in cichlids, is incredibly expensive.
Wait, expensive how? Like, it requires a lot of calories.
Immensely expensive. Producing and maintaining rich pigments isn't some passive trait that just happens. It is a highly active, energy-intensive metabolic process.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, for a body to produce that kind of unprecedented vibrancy, it must be operating at an absolute optimum level of resource allocation.
So it's basically firing on all cylinders.
Exactly. It means every single cellular system is perfect, with a huge surplus of energy to dedicate entirely to aesthetics.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because that completely defies basic evolutionary logic. Well, if building this bright red armor requires a massive biological budget, why is the body spending that budget when there is absolutely no one around to see it?
Right. The audience factor.
Isn't the entire point of vibrant colors in nature usually to attract mates or intimidate rivals?
In almost all known contexts, yes. Striking coloration is a social tool. It's an outward-facing signal.
Right. You get bright red to show a potential mate that you have incredible genes, or you get bright red to intimidate a rival to scream, "Look how strong I am, stay out of my territory."
A biological broadcast system.
Exactly. A broadcast system designed entirely for an audience. But this fish has been sitting in a solitary mesh box its entire life.
Yeah, a literal audience of zero.
There are no mates to impress, there are no rivals to scare off. The mesh prevents anyone from getting in or out. Isn't it perfectly ironic that this fish only reaches absolute peak vibrancy when there are absolutely no mates or rivals around to actually see it?
It is a profound contradiction, for sure. But what's fascinating here is that it actually reveals a hidden mechanical truth about how energy is utilized in living systems.
Okay, I'm tracking.
So we naturally assume that the brilliant color is caused by the presence of mates or rivals, that the fish turns red because it needs to perform for society.
That would make sense, yeah.
But this scenario suggests the exact opposite mechanism is at play.
You mean the capacity to be that brilliantly red is always there, like it's built into the hardware of the fish, but something in the environment is actively turning the dial down?
Exactly. The intrinsic capacity for that aesthetic perfection is always present. But when the fish is living freely in the chaotic general population, that capacity is actively being suppressed.
Okay, let me try to wrap my head around that. What exactly is suppressing it? Like, what is the engine behind that suppression? And why did removing the fish from the pond suddenly take the brakes off?
Well, Aang hypothesizes that the engine of suppression is stress. Specifically, the invisible but relentless stresses of competition.
But does Aang actually have proof of that? Or is this just a wild guess based on one incredibly lucky baby fish that got stuck in a filter basket?
It's a fair question.
Because if I'm playing devil's advocate, maybe this one specific fish just had mutant genetics. Like, maybe it was always going to be super red.
That's a totally fair pushback, but Aang actually notes a very specific precedent in the entry to address that.
Oh, really? I must have missed the significance of that on my first read. What was the precedent?
The observer mentions that they once deliberately isolated a large, fully mature adult male Jewel Cichlid. They took it completely out of the pond's society.
Oh, wow. So what happened to the adult?
The exact same thing. The isolated adult male also grew exceptionally well and sported those exact same bright, intense, unprecedented colors.
No way. The exact same result.
Yep. So this isn't a fluke of juvenile development, and it isn't a genetic mutation in one individual. It is a highly reproducible biological pattern.
That is fascinating.
Whether you are a vulnerable youth or a fully grown adult, when you are removed from the society of the pond, your aesthetic vitality just explodes.
That is wild. Okay, so if the absence of society creates a glow-up, then the presence of society must be incredibly toxic to the individual's biology.
Toxic is a strong word, but biologically, yeah.
We need to unpack this idea of the energy economy you hinted at earlier. What is actually happening to the fish that are swimming freely out there?
Let's look at the biological cost of freedom. Every living organism wakes up with a finite budget of energy for the day, right?
Sure. Calories in, calories out.
Exactly. But when you exist in a community, when you are swimming in the main pond, you are subjected to a massive invisible energy tax. Let's call it the social tax.
The social tax. I love that phrasing, but what are they actually paying for?
They are paying for hypervigilance.
Yeah.
If you are a cichlid in that pond, you have to spend calories and an immense mental bandwidth constantly scanning your environment.
Always looking over your shoulder.
Right. You have to fight to claim a tiny, desirable patch of the pond floor. And once you claim it, the work doesn't stop. You have to spend continuous energy aggressively guarding it from your neighbors.
So you never get a break.
Never. You are constantly assessing threats, constantly navigating the complex mating hierarchy.
It sounds utterly exhausting. It's like a never-ending turf war.
It is. And biologically, that state of perpetual threat assessment produces stress hormones, basically the fish equivalent of cortisol.
Oh, man. Cortisol's the worst.
And here is the mechanical secret. When a body is flooded with stress hormones, it immediately halts all non-essential long-term cellular function.
Because it thinks it's about to be in a fight for its life.
Exactly. The body says, I cannot afford to spend precious calories building brilliant red pigment for my scales right now because I might need those calories to physically fight the fish next to me in 5 seconds.
Wow.
So the aesthetic potential is suppressed just to fund survival.
So all that vibrant color is literally being stolen by the anxiety of existing around others.
That's a poetic way to put it, but yes.
The fish in the main pond aren't less red because they lack the genes. They're less red because their biological bank accounts are drained every single day just by paying the social tax of living in the community.
Precisely. Now look back at the fish in the mesh basket.
Right, the hermit fish.
The mesh physically prevents predators from entering, and it prevents the fish from leaving. Therefore, the social tax drops to absolute zero.
Because there's nothing to fight over.
Right. The fish no longer have a territory to aggressively defend because the walls of its territory are impenetrable. It has no rivals to fight. It has no mates to perform for. It requires zero hypervigilance.
So 100% of its daily energy budget, every single calorie it consumes from whatever floats into that basket, is kept completely in-house.
Yes. The immense energy that would have been wasted on vigilance, combat, and stress is instead poured entirely into pure, selfish physical growth.
The physiological brakes are taken off.
Completely. The resulting vibrancy isn't a signal to others at all. It's just the sheer, unadulterated byproduct of a perfectly efficient, stress-free energy economy.
You know, listening to this, I absolutely cannot help but draw the human parallels.
I was wondering when we get there.
I mean, how can you not? Because when you describe the pond, the constant threat assessment, the fighting for a tiny patch of territory, the performing for the mating hierarchy, it is a painfully accurate description of modern human life.
The analogies are almost impossible to ignore. We are highly social creatures operating in incredibly dense, high-friction environments.
Right. Think about the person who is just absolutely grinding in a major city. They are paying that massive social tax every single day.
Oh, yeah. Commuting, working, socializing.
They are exhausted by the chaotic, performative dating scene. They are burnt out by the stressful corporate ladder, constantly looking over their shoulder to see who is gunning for their promotion.
Aggressively guarding their little patch of influence in the office.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're spending all their mental and physical calories just maintaining their position in the pond.
And we often celebrate that, we call it the hustle. We view that friction as the necessary cost of
I
ambition.
totally do.
But what this deep dive forces us to acknowledge is the profound physiological penalty of that constant engagement.
But the cost of the hustle.
Yeah. That person's internal vitality, their physical health, their mental clarity, their true creative potential is actively being suppressed by the sheer exhaustion of participating in the arena.
And then imagine that exact same person just completely unplugs.
Just walks away.
Yeah. They step entirely out of the pond. They move to a remote cabin in the woods. They delete every social media app on their phone.
No more LinkedIn, no more Instagram.
Right. They remove themselves entirely from the dating pool and the professional turf wars. And suddenly, without any of those external drains on their bandwidth, they experience this ultimate, inexplicable glow-up.
Because the biological brakes have been removed.
Exactly. They start sleeping 8 solid hours, their skin clears up, they get into incredible physical shape, their mind gets razor sharp.
It's the aesthetic vitality Aang talked about.
Yes, they achieve their absolute peak aesthetic and physical vitality. And the irony is, just like the fish, they didn't do it to impress a mate or intimidate a coworker. They achieved perfection simply because all of that brilliant energy finally had nowhere to flow but inward.
It's a very seductive idea, isn't it? The fantasy of the cabin in the woods is rooted in this exact biological truth that society drains us.
It's the ultimate dream for so many people right now.
But we have to be intellectually honest about the other side of this equation. We have to look closely at the reality of the basket.
I know, because as beautiful as the glow-up is, you are still in a tiny mesh box.
That is the ultimate, unavoidable trade-off. The fish achieved a level of unprecedented, breathtaking beauty. It reached the absolute pinnacle of its genetic potential. But the cost of that perfection was absolute irrelevance.
Irrelevance. Oof, that is a heavy word.
But it's biologically accurate. By being trapped in the basket, it forfeited its participation in the ecosystem.
Right, it's totally cut off.
It cannot contribute its supposedly superior genes to the pool. It cannot participate in the dynamic, chaotic flow of the pond. It is a masterpiece, perfectly preserved, but permanently logged in a vault where no one will ever interact with it.
Wow.
It achieved physical perfection only by becoming a ghost to its own species.
A masterpiece locked in a vault. That completely flips the romanticized idea of isolation on its head.
It's a double-edged sword.
It really is. And that brings us right back to you, the listener. Because we started this deep dive talking about the assumption that reaching your peak requires conquering the world.
Which we've seen isn't necessarily true.
Right. But Aang's notes on the Jewel Cichlid ask you to look at your own daily environments with a much more critical eye.
You have to identify your own personal pond and honestly assess the toll it's taking on you.
Think about your own daily competition for territory. It's rarely physical space for us anymore. It's office politics.
It's fighting for attention.
Yes, it's the relentless, soul-crushing exhaustion of social media clout-spending hours trying to maintain a curated image, or fighting in comment sections to aggressively defend your opinions against strangers you will never even meet.
It's a huge energy drain.
It's the general crushing societal pressure to be seen, to be relevant, to be constantly engaging in the friction of the modern world. So, are you exhausted by it?
Most people are.
Are your own colors fading? Is your own vitality dulling simply because you are spending every ounce of your energy guarding your little rock from the fish swimming next to you?
It's a diagnostic question we rarely stop to ask ourselves. Are we actively sacrificing our internal aesthetic vitality just to maintain our mediocre status in a chaotic environment?
What if stepping back from that competitive fray? What if deliberately building yourself a temporary mesh basket and isolating yourself from the social tax is the exact thing you need to unlock your own peak potential?
To finally have that energy surplus.
Right. What if the energy you desperately need to truly shine is currently being wasted on competitions that don't actually matter?
But there is a final, lingering danger hidden in Aang's notes that we cannot ignore as we wrap this up.
What's that?
It's a detail about the nature of the basket itself. Remember how we discussed the mechanics of the mesh?
Yeah, how it started as a safe house.
Exactly. The observer specifically noted that the basket once offered it protection when it was a vulnerable fry. But eventually, inevitably, that exact same protective mesh is what trapped the fish as it grew.
The sanctuary hardened into a prison.
Which leaves us with this final thought to ponder. At what point in our own lives do the protective boundaries we set up to keep ourselves safe cross the line into becoming cages?
That's a scary thought.
We build these walls. Maybe it's working entirely remotely to avoid office drama. Maybe it's retreating into algorithmically curated echo chambers so our views are never challenged.
Or maybe it's just pushing people away to protect our emotional energy.
Exactly. We build them to reduce our stress.
And for a while, it works. We heal. We grow.
We do. But eventually, we outgrow the need for that specific protection. We become large enough and strong enough to navigate the main pond.
But the walls are still there.
Yet the walls we built remain. We get comfortable in the isolation. We get stuck in our own baskets.
And we bounce right off the mesh when we finally try to leave.
Exactly. And the ultimate paradox we are left wrestling with today is this. What if remaining in that cage, completely cut off from the beautiful, exhausting chaos and connection of the outside world, is actually the only way we will ever truly see how brightly we can shine?
Wow.
Do you choose the messy, vital reality of the pond or the perfect, isolated beauty of the basket?
It really makes you rethink what it means to be a well-adjusted participant in society versus being an entirely self-actualized individual. It's entirely possible that biology won't let you have both.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
It is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it gave you something entirely new to chew on.
Keep questioning your environment and keep exploring. Thank you for listening.